So this is a speaker meeting. Our speaker will share his experience, strength, and hope for approximately 45 minutes. We got to ask out of respect for our speaker to please remain seated until he has finished. It is my pleasure to introduce Dave.
Just so you know, I'm the backup speaker. The main speaker couldn't make it, so the expectation should be a little bit lower, right? My name's Dave. I'm an alcoholic. It's a privilege and an honor to be able to speak in an AA meeting. I owe my life to this program. I love this program. My sobriety date is October 6th of 93, and for that, I'm forever grateful that I haven't had to go back out since I came in here. Relapse is optional. And I'm amazed when I come in, all these empty seats in the front. I don't get it. But with me, I'm sober 27 years and I still sit in the front row. And for me, it's because I get distracted. I see something going on or hear someone, and it's like, what is that? Look at that. And I can't pay attention. So what I found out when I was new, my sponsor told me you sit in the front. And I still do that today. I sit in the front row. So these are like these are not the cheap seats. These are the high-end seats in the front, and this is where the magic happens. So I'm just amazed that they're empty. And I want to say too, Mike asked me to speak, and he called me to make sure I was going to be here, and he can't be here, and I was thinking about why he can't be here in my head. Right? It's funny to the people that know. So he's an older guy, a little bit older than me, but he thought it'd be a good idea to get a dirt bike. And he was out riding with a bunch of younger guys. And he was telling me, right, And so he wrecked one time, and he thought, it's all right, I'm doing this. And he said he got courageous and a little more confidence, and he wrecked again. And he thought, you know what, we're halfway there. I'm just going to push on. It's like a true alcoholic experience, right? So Mike's not here because he wrecked 2 more times. And finally, the 4th time, I think he cracked some ribs, and he couldn't hardly breathe, and he got home, and guess what he's doing? He's selling the bike. And that's the kind of alcoholic I was, you know what I mean? Like, I got reminded over and over and over that this thing wasn't going to work for me, but it's like I was already out on the ride. I had to do it until I got back, and where back was, I had no idea. And my mind does that. Someone tells me a story and it just starts like going, and I don't know if anyone else can relate to that. I heard a speaker one time say, bipolar and just have 2 voices in my head would be like a vacation from what goes on in my head on a daily basis. My wonderful Al-Anon girlfriend is here. We've been together 9 years. And another motorcycle story, right? A true alcoholic. We were coming back from our 9-year anniversary dinner, and I wrecked on the Harley. I laid it down doing like 40 miles an hour, and we walked away. A little banged up. But I share that story because I live my life to the fullest today, and sometimes it gets a little bit too full, right? I still kind of push that envelope. There's still that alcoholic thinking. I just make bad decisions sometimes, and so now I'm sitting with that decision about, are we going to get back on the bike? Is it going to be worth it? Look at all we could have lost, how precious my life is. But I think the most amazing part is that all these things I get to do, when the cop showed up, I wasn't afraid. I gave him my license. He didn't write me a ticket, right? Like just having an interaction with him and me, he knew that I wasn't drinking. And that's one of the probably the biggest blessings that the program has given me is I don't live in fear today of being found out. Right? I'm not paranoid. I definitely have a lot of fear for other stuff, but it's not from drinking or drugging, and that was how I lived my life on a daily basis for years before I got here. So I'll back up. I'll spare you the long drunk-a-log, but I remember the first time I drank, and it was amazing. I was in school. I was in 7th grade. I heard about these, the cool kids were going to be getting beer, and they were going to be meeting before the dance by the field house or whatever. And I'm like, hey, can I come? I want to come. And I was never one of the cool kids. And Actually, I was pretty socially retarded, and that really didn't go well with my drinking because not only did I make bad decisions when I drank, I just made bad decisions anyway and said the wrong things. And I mean, I can tell you over and over and over again of all the things that I did and said that I'm just like, what was I thinking? Anyway, so I show up at this gathering, and they have like a 24-pack of Budweiser, and then all of a sudden they're smoking weed. And I wanted all I could get, you know? And so that was the first time I really remember getting drunk and stoned and whatever, and then went right into the 7th grade dance in 7th grade, you know? And I did some shit that I shouldn't have done, and I made an ass out of myself, and I went home for the rest of the night and just thought about it all night. It seems like alcoholics like me, I just have this compulsive thinker. I just think and think and think and think. I just can't stop thinking. And I've heard in here they have the little slogans on the wall, and some of the people come in and they say, what does that mean? Think, think, think. And the joke is it doesn't apply to you. Like, you already do that enough. You don't need to think anymore. But anyway, I can go on and on and on about all the messed up stuff that I did, but I drank alcoholically from the beginning. I really never tried to control my drinking, except in the end when the therapist said, okay, we'll see if you can stop drinking on your own. And I knew it was a lie. You know, I knew I could not do it. I drank for effect every time, and I didn't just drink, I did anything. I never did heroin because the people I ran with never did heroin, or I'd have done heroin. I'd have done anything. It didn't matter what it was. And so I grew up in a family where, you know, Dad was kind of a silent rager. Mom was like an emotional cripple. She really wasn't wanted in her house. And it was just like a roller coaster. You know, they'd get in the fights and they'd go in the bathroom and they'd be yelling and screaming. And me and my two sisters would be at the other end of the house. And it was traumatic. And so my life became, I'd come home and I'd say, hey, I'm going to go ride around. And I'd just get on my bike and go ride around the neighborhood. Go garbage picking or go do whatever. Light garbage cans on fire. I like fires, right? I would burn shit. And then the next day I'd have to go back and look, and the garbage can would be all, you know, like, because there was a lot of hot shit on one side, and mailbox baseball, and rim hopping. I don't know if you guys ever heard of rim hopping, but we'd get someone with the car that could drive, and we'd go drive around and find basketball rims, and we'd run up there and rip them off the front of the house, and, you know, have like a truck with like 15 or 20 basketball rims, and then just go start a pile in the desert of basketball rims we, you know, ripped off. Just antisocial stuff, you know? And it might have been with drugs and alcohol, and it might have not been with drugs. It didn't matter. But the thing about drugs and alcohol and me is that it made me not worry so much about what I did. And it allowed me to kind of have a little bit of peace and a little break from the monotony of my mind, right? Of being paranoid and depressed and anxious and worried and fearful and all that shit all the time. And so I made a lot of bad decisions when I was drinking and drugging and when I was not drinking and drugging. But finally I found this therapist, and this therapist said, okay, you can try and quit drinking on your own. And I think the first week I came back and I said, hey, I didn't drink. And the next week I was like, oh, I drank. And then the next week, oh, I did, you know, crystal or whatever. But it became real apparent that I wasn't going to be able to quit drinking on my own. And so I went to a treatment center, not really a treatment center, it was like a 2-week program in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina that my mom found. Heavy duty therapy. And you know, when I was filling out the intake, they sent out like a questionnaire to see, you know, what your problems are. And I don't know, they would probably find you a therapist that was able to deal with, you know, someone like you. And I remember my mom was pissed off because I was filling out the intake and I was drunk. And I thought that is perfect because then there's no reservations, right? I just put it all down exactly how it is. The filter is gone. And I think it was like last minute to get me into this treatment center in South Carolina. And so we sent that off, and I think the next day I was going to the airport, and I got my buddy to take me to the airport. I said, Mom, I don't want you to take me. My buddy's going to take me. And I think she knew. And so we went and hit like all the airport bars, and we were drinking like kamikazes and Coronas and B50, all these crazy drinks, and the bartenders are like, what in the hell? And I got hammered, and I got on the plane, and I had another cocktail, and I passed out probably. And I got off the plane, and these people for this, it was called the STAR program, they picked me up in South Carolina. And I can't remember if they're like, you smell like you've been drinking or whatever. I don't know. But I remember it was just really surreal because I knew why I was going there, right? Because my life was a mess. I was suicidal. I thought about killing myself all day, every day. Like life was miserable, beyond miserable. And I remember they sat me, you know, a lot of these when you come new into treatment, they like take your picture, and so here's your like your before picture, and then you have your after picture, and they give you the folder when you leave. And I remember when they had me take my before picture, they kind of cornered me in the room and they said, "Hey, we just got your intake packet today. We tried to call and say, don't come. We're not equipped to handle someone as sick as you are." Honest to God. But we see in here that you're suicidal. Are you suicidal? And I was like, hell yeah, I'm suicidal all the time. And so they made me promise that if I was going to commit suicide, that I like had to come get them first. Right? And I'm like, okay. But you know, when I was there, it was not funny. I was miserable all the time. Like my stomach was always tight and churning. I always felt sick. I was uncomfortable no matter where I was all the time. I remember in the end, I was fishing with a buddy. We were driving out to like Bartlett Lake or something, and I was so in my head. I just remember the whole way out there watching these two people in front of us in a car, and they were having a conversation. That just blew my mind. Like they were having a conversation. And I'd gotten so progressed in my disease and my depression and my despair that I just couldn't talk to people. I couldn't look people in the eyes. I couldn't communicate. Like I was a mess. So anyway, I get done making my promise that I won't kill myself or I'll go get help. And it was a 2-week program of just like intensive group work, singles work, body work. I mean, every kind of modality of therapy you can imagine it was. And so I started to get a little uncomfortable, and then I started to get more uncomfortable, and they started just poking me and prod me. And all of a sudden, and I was kind of a rager. You know, I had a couple older sisters that used to beat up on me, and I just go like tornado, just wild, crazy, psychotic. And I remember about day 4 in this treatment, recovery, whatever you want to call it, place, they pushed me a little bit too hard. And there was like 8 women on this side, and like, I think there was me. I think there was just 2 guys. There was a 3rd guy, but he left on day 2. He said, fuck this, I'm out of here. He didn't want to go deep, you know, and so he got on the plane and went back home. And it was on like day 3 or 4, and it was me and this other guy, I can't remember, Dawn. And the therapist started really like backing me into a corner, calling me out of my shit. And I just like snapped. And I said, you both are a couple of fucking lesbians and fuck all this. And you know, like I went ballistic because I was that scared little kid and I just lost it. And I stormed out of the room into this other like back room. I remember sitting on the edge of the bed and I thought, I'm fucked. You know, and I had that big grapefruit like right at my throat, you know, and it felt like my head was going to pop off. And I'd been there so many times because I was so uncomfortable and I didn't know what to do. And within a short period of time, that guy, Don, he was a big black guy with bedroom eyes, just very kind-hearted. And he was there because he liked women too much. And he was married. You know, everyone there had their own issue, but it wasn't just about alcohol. Anyway, I remember he came in there, he sat down on the bed next to me, and he said, do you want to come back in there? And my biggest fear was not being accepted, was, you know, I really wanted to connect with people. I really wanted to have friends, and I didn't know how. And I had just alienated that whole room of all these people that I was in this heavy-duty intensive therapy with. And I knew that they'd seen the true side of Dave, and I tried to cover that up all the time. I didn't want anyone to see that like it was a secret. And Don was sitting next to me, and he said again, hey, you want to go back in there? And I thought, if I don't go back in there, I go home, and I go home to hell, right? Because I just left it. I knew what was there. And I truly believe that was my burning bush. That was my spiritual experience, as it says in the big book. And I followed him back in that room, and and it was like everything changed because it was me and then everyone else. And that's what I needed to feel, right? That was my bottom. And I had created it. All this was my doing. I had done it. And, you know, one or two or three at a time, everyone else there, pretty much all the other participants, the 8 women said, we want nothing to do with you. If you're in the same room with us, we're leaving. We don't trust you. You're a little bit unstable. And that was really hard to take. But it was like God took me by my hand and walked me back in that room. And I finished out that program. And by the time I left, I had had my spiritual awakening, right? I had had just a taste of peace, humility. I don't know what it was, but I had just a taste of being comfortable for just moments at a time. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. I can do this. And they were all wishing me well. And, you know, they had kind of seen that I came full circle. And I was invested in this thing. And I was supposed to go stay in a hotel that night, and then the next day I was going to fly out. And they had set up for me to go to a halfway house called Crossroads down in Phoenix. And they said, you will go to a meeting that night. You're discharged or you're whatever in the hotel. And I didn't trust myself, and I didn't want to give up what I'd found. Right? I'd been to like 2 or 3 AA meetings before, but like I sat in the back and I came late and I left early, and I really didn't want anything they had because I was just so uncomfortable, man. My skin would crawl. Don't come talk to me. Don't give me your book. Don't, you know, I'm just here because I don't know where else to go. So I'd seen a little bit about AA. I think I'd been to like 3 meetings. And so I got to that hotel room and I was on the phone calling AA, and that wasn't me. Right? That was that person that God had inspired to try a different way. And I found someone came and picked me up and took me with me. And I can't tell you where the meeting was or who was. I don't even remember the meeting. But I know I got a little white plastic chip that says AA in gold on the front. And that was my first 24-hour chip. And then from that hotel, I got on the plane and went down to Crossroads for treatment. And Crossroads it's a 3-quarter house for men. There's like 30-something guys. They have meetings there all the time. It's been there a long time. And there's old timers. There's long time sobriety. And when I walked into Crossroads, the guy says, "How long are you staying?" And I said, "I don't know. How long do guys normally stay?" And he goes, "Well, it just depends." And I said, "Well, how long do guys that make it stay?" And he goes, 6 months. And I said, "Sign me up." You know, and I think when I had my little breakdown and went back in the room in Myrtle Beach, I think I had surrendered, right? And I had become willing to go to any lengths. And I come to find out later in the big book, you know, they talk about step zero. Step 0 is being willing to go to any lengths. I gave up having to know. I gave up having to figure out it and be the guy that could kind of make my way, because that just did not work. And when I was brand new in AA, I learned real quick that they like people that just sit down and shut up and do what you're told. And the beautiful thing about that was that I started seeing results, you know, and a tremendous weight, I think, and burden was lifted off of my shoulders because I didn't have to know anymore. And God knows I was new. They all talked about the new guys not knowing anything. Right? Just sit down and shut up and put the cotton in your mouth and take it out of your ears and get the big book and get a sponsor. And it's not that it was easy to do all that stuff, but it was the first time, I think, ever in my life that I felt hopeful. I felt hopeful that there was a way. And there weren't a whole lot of people telling me exactly how I was supposed to do it, right? They weren't real bossy. They were kind of just subtle, and they make suggestions, and I could take that. I didn't need a dictator telling me what I was supposed to do and how I was supposed to do it. And but, you know, they suggested that you get a sponsor and you do the steps, and I remember I was going to get a sponsor. And, you know, that's not easy to do. Like for a 21-year-old man that just really failed out, and he's in this halfway house, and I think I was still working at the pest control company spraying bugs, and I mean, it's not a bad job, but I had to go ask someone else to show me how to stay sober. And so I told some of the guys in the house about going up after the men's stag meeting. I was going to ask one of the guys to, sponsor me or whatever. And the meeting got over and I lost my courage and I was like trying to sneak out the back door. And like 3 of the guys from the house kind of surrounded me and they're like, hey, you said you were going to go get a sponsor, right? AA will do for us what we cannot do for ourselves, right? We got to tell on ourselves. And I really believe that the best I could do was to ask those guys to hold me accountable without asking them and hold me accountable. But those are the kind of guys I ran with when I was newly sober. And so I really saw no option. And so I went up to the front and I'm like, hey, do you have a temporary sponsor list? And I remember Jim, it was the Tuesday night men's stag, I think. Jim says, no, we don't have a temporary sponsor list, but Charlie right here, Charlie will sponsor you. And so I got a sponsor without really even asking. And so Charlie was my sponsor, and Charlie took me through the steps. And he didn't read the book with me. We did most of it over the phone. I remember to work my fifth step, I drove out to Tempe, and there was some concert like Pink Floyd, and I get to his house, and we sit down and get ready to do the fifth step, and he's like, where's your fears column? Where's your sex inventory? And I had missed like 3 columns, and he sent me home. He said, you're not done. After I'd gone through all that traffic in Tempe, and I think it was like Pink Floyd or something. But, I wasn't pissed off. I wasn't like, fuck this, and this bullshit. And I went home and I finished it. And I came back. He would tell me, I would be like, Charlie, I'm ready. Let's do this. And he'd be like, hey, I told you to read this for a week. Read it for a week, and then we'll move on. I was chomping at the bit for this sobriety thing, And that's why I see these chairs empty. I'm like, what is wrong with you people? Sit in the front row. Because when I got here, it's like I had tasted sugar for the first time in my life, and I wanted more of it. Because I'm a real alcoholic, and AA became my new drug. And I wanted it. And I'd read the book, and I'd relate, and I'd find candlelight meetings, and I'd go back to my halfway house, and I'd go, oh my God, this freaking meeting, they shut the lights out, and you can sit there and just listen. And it was like a new kind of peace that I hadn't experienced in other meetings. If you haven't been to a candlelight meeting, check them out. When's the one? They have the one Wednesday night? Monday night. It's an awesome candlelight meeting. Something from hell. What is it called? Hell and back. Yeah. No, hell and back, right? But I go to that meeting, and it takes me right back to that meeting I used to go to at Mid-City. And it's a big meeting, but I don't know why that was so funny. Anyway, but so when I got here, there was all these, opportunities to just be like amazed. And so much of the time, I just don't see it, and other people, and I don't know why. But maybe I was just so hungry for something other than what I'd always had. The book spoke to me, and I'm not a big book thumper. You might think I am. But when it comes to the 12 and 12, I think I might have opened it in 12 and 12 studies. I have one. I don't read it. I honestly don't, But I stay sober, and I feel like I have good sobriety. There's not just one way to do this thing, For every person in here, there's that many ways to do AA. And I'm real cautious of the people that get up here and start telling you, this is how it works, and this is what you got to do, and it's this easy, and you do this, and this, and this, and this. And I'm like, I just don't, that's not how I am. Anyway, so I finished the steps with my sponsor. I did all of them. We sat down and we did the fifth step, and I can't tell you exactly what, his synopsis of all my resentments were, but, I went home. I was quiet for an hour. The radio was off in the truck. I did 6 and 7 when I got home. I pondered, right? I've done meditation on and off. I learned it in early sobriety a little bit. And then I started making my amends. And I remember the first time I made an amends, it was like that guy in the Toyota commercial, how he like jumps up in the air and like clicks his heels and kicks. That's how it was the first time I made my amends. And there was one amends that I didn't know how I was going to make it. And everyone I talked to just said, do what the book says, right? Follow the directions in the book. and it just said, you got to be willing. At any time, be willing. And it was just amazing. It almost still sends chills up my spine. The opportunity came to make that amends, and I was willing, and I made the amends, and I walked out like, oh my God, this thing works. This thing, AA, the big book, the prayer, the sponsorship, it freaking works. And so never once have I questioned AA. You know, I hear about people that talk about, oh yeah, I tried AA and it wasn't for me. And I'm like, man, if you only knew, right? Like if you only knew. I don't know. So I finished the steps, and I started looking at what I wanted to do in life and what I wanted to be, and you know what my goals were. And so I went back to school and got a job as a waiter and had to start as a busser. And I was 21 when I sobered up. And I remember I used to work at this Mexican food restaurant, and this one little Mexican kid, Caesar, he'd always call me big guy. What up, big guy? You know, and I was working as a 21-year-old busser with all these high school kids, and it never once bothered me, right? When I lived at Crossroads, we all had to do dishes for like probably 100 people. I mean, it was a big freaking kitchen. We'd do dishes for 2 weeks. And some guys would go back out. They'd be like, I'm not doing dishes. I'm too good for dishes. And I don't know. You know, I was blessed with a willing attitude. And I just was grateful. You know, like I got to do dishes with another guy that was trying to get sober. And we had great conversation. And it taught me to be of service. And so then I guess when I was a busser, I was humble. You know, I was a busser around other 21-year-olds that were waiting tables and serving and making tips and tipping me out, you know, my little quarter on their dollar. And it never once bothered me. It was like AA had brainwashed me and told me that it was going to be okay. I just needed to do this thing one day at a time. So eventually I went back to school, and all the while I was always active in the program. You know, I had sponsors, I had sponsees, I always went to meetings. And about 6 months sober, I left that halfway house. And I got plugged into this place called Fellowship Hall. And it was a club. And there was a girl, Robin Pearsall, there that kind of took to me. And she worked in treatment. She was a CSAC, Certified Substance Abuse Counselor. And for some reason, there was lots of Daves, and we all had nicknames. And I got the nickname Super Dave. Right? And I freaking loved it. And it was like, it would make people laugh. And, you know, part of it was like that joke about Super Dave Osborne. But then who doesn't want to be called Super Dave? Like, I freaking loved it. You know, when I got here, I really didn't think too much of myself. And I did therapy. I've done therapy on and off quite a few times because I'm still sick, right? I got issues. I'm not afraid to admit it. And so they gave me this nickname, Super Dave, and they dragged me along to this roundup in Flagstaff. And you know, I talk about how AA is amazing and how it moved me and how I was inspired. I was still uncomfortable most of the time. And especially at a big roundup where all these people are camping and there's really no routine and what are you supposed to be doing? You just sit around and talk, and oh, my skin would crawl. But when they call me Super Dave, it would make it crawl a little bit less. And so I went to this roundup in Flagstaff, and all of a sudden I'm like driving home going, oh my God, that was freaking amazing, right? Like they had the dance, and I don't know about the dance because I really don't dance, and I didn't know how to talk to women, and you know, I was a freaking mess when I got here, but I just kept doing it, right? I didn't have some gift for AA or staying sober. I just did it. I just walked through the fear. At Flagstaff Roundup, it became normal for us. We didn't want to go early, right? Because we were like entitled, and we would just bring our own chairs. And so we'd go 5 minutes before the speaker, and we'd roll right up in the front row. We'd set up our chairs and make a whole new front row and just sit down, and here's the meeting. And that's what I tell the guys that I work with. I said, if you want a chair in the front, just pull up a freaking chair and tell them you need to hear the message, right? You got to put yourself first if you're going to get this thing. So I did lots of roundups. Me and a buddy did like 4 or 5 one year. I think I was October. I did the international in '95, and I I sobered up in 93, so I was like a year and a half sober. And we're at Jack Murphy Stadium, and there's, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of people in there saying the Serenity Prayer, and it's amazing. I mean, to be a part of that, I've always just wanted to be a part of something, you know, connect with you about something, because I really always just felt so alone. You know, when I sobered up, the Eagles song Desperado was kind of my sobriety song. And I remember in my mind, I can see this cowboy riding the fences, and that's how I was for a long time. I have huge trust issues. I don't trust no one ever, because that's how my family was. You know, we were all for ourselves. Don't ever depend on anyone else, because they were all about themselves, because we were just really emotionally distant and messed up. And so when I sobered up, and that Eagles song Desperado, and it said, come down off your fences and kind of come rejoin the tribe. It's like AA is my new tribe. AA is my family. And I've never kind of strayed away. I do as much as I can with AA, answering phones, you know. I've moved a couple times in sobriety. I moved to Salt Lake. And, you know, the crazy thing is, if you haven't done it, when you're new, it don't matter how many years you got. When you move to a new place, you're brand new all over again. And a lot of people relapse because you have no support. You have no community. Everything's foreign. You go to a meeting and you don't know anyone. And, you know, I was sitting at a meeting, and they were talking to someone in Phoenix, and they said something about Super Dave. And I'm like, you gotta be shitting me. And so it was like the good Lord sent out a welcoming committee to this one guy, Steve B., that knew someone that was in Wacky Pond, Phoenix. And so all of a sudden I got sucked into the young people's group in Salt Lake. Like, it was amazing. But I had to go to the meeting, right? I had to go to the meeting to have that miracle happen. I had to show up. And so I was in Salt Lake for a couple of years doing an amazing job. Graduated college, got a job in sales, got all the, you know, the truck and the account and all this. And it was a cool experience, but it wasn't for me. You know, and I'm driving back from Seattle, and I read this book about finding passion and creativity in your work. And I was like, I don't feel passionate or creative at all doing what I'm doing. So I went home and I quit, you know. And I called my parents and I said, hey, I quit. I'm going to come home in 2 weeks. And I started doing like remodeling and putting toilets in people's houses and bathtubs. And I loved it. And I did that for like 10 years. You know, sobriety has given me the ability to be confident in doing whatever I do. And it's the right thing at the time. I don't have to second guess myself. And if I do, I have a sponsor that I go to. I have guys that I have in my circle that'll redirect me. So I was a contractor for a while. And then all of a sudden, a friend of mine was talking about moving to Prescott, and I thought, I don't want to grow old in Phoenix. Like, Phoenix is just rough, and it's hot, and it's busy. And I had a house down there. And all of a sudden, in like 2 months, I was living on a lot out in Prescott Valley. I'd bought like this 40-foot old travel trailer, and I was going to build a house. You think I'd ever built a house? No. But AA gave me the confidence that if I asked enough questions, and I'm pretty, you know, I have some ingenuity and figure stuff out. But I was scared shitless. And all of a sudden I'm sitting out there going, oh my God, what did I get myself into? I'm building a freaking house. But I pulled it off, you know. And I knew if I was going to be successful up here, I better get involved in AA. And I started going to the Welcome Valley group over in PV. And they weren't very nice. They weren't very welcoming. They just weren't, you know. But I kept going because I'd felt like that before. And they told me that it's all me, right? And it really didn't feel like all me, because every week it was the same thing, but I just kept going. And then all of a sudden they wanted someone to chair the meeting, and I said, I'll chair it. And you know, the next week I chaired the meeting, and everyone changed. They were much more welcoming. They were glad to see me. But y'all know what the truth is, right? I gave myself permission to be a part of, and the minute I felt included, it was all good. Because I really judge my reality based on how I feel. Because when I start feeling uncomfortable or unsettled or afraid or angry or rageful, which I still feel all those things today, it's because I'm not feeling connected. I'm not feeling supported, loved. I don't feel like I matter. And I start reacting, right? And that's when I make bad decisions. And I've learned over and over in here that if I'm feeling angry, rageful, any of those things, and I really feel like I got to say or do something, the best thing I can do is nothing, right? Because those feelings. And it just like put a chink in that little emotional reaction I was in. And man, I kept calling people. And the next 8 months until I could hire a lawyer and go back to court and make it right was miserable. And I did that to myself, right? 20-something years sober, and I can't just let it go. Just turn it over. Bullshit. Right? I tried every night. I'd share at the meetings. I was pissed. No one called me out. Like, what's up with my peer group? They didn't say, hey, that rage is yours. That anger is yours. Probably because they were a little bit afraid. They didn't want to confront me on that. And so they just figured they'd let me and God figure it out. And we did, kind of. But the beautiful thing is I didn't have to drink. It's all worked out now. But something else is coming, because something else always comes. You know, something else always comes. Me and my beautiful girlfriend had like a really rough time, and we were about ready to both walk and call it quits. And it's because I still have issues. I was going to say we both, but she doesn't need me to talk about her having issues. But I still have issues. And the amazing part is that she's been involved in Al-Anon for the past 2 years. And so now we can kind of talk the same language sometimes. We can get to the cause a little bit quicker. But I still rage. You know, I don't throw shit. I've never hit anyone. Sometimes I'll say bad words, and maybe someday I'll learn not to, you know. But I'm still that wounded little inner child, whatever you want to, you know, call it, is still there. And usually it's when I'm not going to enough meetings. I don't have enough sponsees I'm working with. Nate's not calling me, asking me all these wonderful questions that make me feel like I have something to give, right? He doesn't encourage my sobriety. I don't know. I've never not been active in AA. I have never not been active in AA. You know why? Because I'm sick. And no matter how sober I am, I'm never immune to the next drink. It's a daily reprieve, and that's it. You know, in our recent struggles, what's really come to light is all it's about is today. That's all I freaking have, you know? A lot of times we try and make plans, and we have hopes and what the future's going to look like, and, you know, this fairy tale. But, man, AA has taught me over and over and over again just to be in the moment. You know, we were sitting at dinner tonight, me and Tamara and Nate and his girl, and it was amazing. Like just going to dinner, and Tamara says, "Are you nervous to speak?" And I said, "No, not yet." And I'm a little bit nervous now, but I don't really get nervous a lot. And when I first got here, I was sitting in that, I can remember I was sitting in that chair, I think it was a chair in my therapist's office, and she was going to let me try to quit drinking on my own. And she said, "What do you want?" Right? Like she asked me if I could have anything, what would I want? You know what I wanted? I just wanted to be comfortable. That's it. I don't want a new car. I don't want money. I don't want a girlfriend. I just wanted to be comfortable in my own skin, because I was never, ever comfortable in my own skin unless I was drinking or drugging. That was the only time I was ever comfortable, or doing things to excess, like the motorcycles or horses or whatever I do. I push the envelope, you know, and I still find other things that substitute for drugs and alcohol that give me that little high, that little euphoria, and I still love it. And it's a reminder that I'm an alcoholic to the core, right? To the roots growing out of my feet. there's no doubt that I am an alcoholic. I think like an alcoholic. I act like an alcoholic. I react especially like an alcoholic because that's my number one thing. I was going to tell them off at work and because they really pissed me off. And I'm so grateful that I couldn't get in to see my big two bosses, the director and then my boss, for like 4 days. It was a good thing because I got fired. And I love that job today. Right? That's what my best thinking does. It'll get me fired. Best thing I can do is not listen to my mind and listen to the people around me. But you know, when I speak, I never know what I'm going to say. I didn't bring the book up here this time. I've never had like an outline that I go by because I really like living one day at a time. Because I used to be just petrified, anxiety, anticipation about like what's going to come and what's going to happen and how it's going to work and where am I going to be and am I going to be okay? And it's like, oh my God, that is brutal. So you're saying all I have to do is show up in a meeting and sit in the front and thank the speaker and reach out to a newcomer. That's what my first sponsor told me to do. Sit in the front, thank the speaker, and reach out your hand to a newcomer. So to the 3 newcomers that are here, welcome. Take something, I said, and maybe it can help you stay sober today. But if you go to a meeting every day and you tell on yourself when your mind starts getting a little squirrely, I guarantee you'll never have to take another drink if you don't want to. Because I guarantee people that drink again do not tell on themselves. They do not. One quick little story. I really haven't thought about drinking or drugging since I've been here. I really haven't. At a year sober, I broke up with the girl that I was kind of dating. It wasn't really that serious, but she was what I had. So when she said, hey, peace out, I'm like, oh. And, I thought about drinking. I'm like driving down Greenway Parkway by 32nd Street, and I remember looking off, there's a liquor store off on the right. And I looked at the liquor store, and I thought, oh my God, that's just slow suicide. I might as well just kill myself. Like the thoughts went that fast. Drink? No. Bullet to the head. But I knew that if I kept going on Greenway Road, I'd hit Scottsdale Road. And I don't know if any of you guys know North Scottsdale Fellowship Club, but there's a candlelight meeting there too. And I had been, and it was a good thing I'd been, because in that moment, it was like 9:30 at night. I'd gotten off work. She just broke up with me. No drinking. I really don't want to kill myself. And I don't know I think I tried to call my sponsor, and it just went to voicemail. And so next thing I know is I'm just going to North Scottsdale Fellowship. And I went to that meeting. I remember there was a biker that talked about pulling his lock off and throwing it at some guy that cut him off. And I was like home, like he was sharing his rage. And I walked out of the meeting, and I thought, I'm going to be okay. Like no big deals. You know what I mean? So that was the one time in early sobriety that I thought about drinking. The next time, honestly, was the day after I went to court and I got, like totally shafted. Really, I haven't been that rageful probably ever in my life. And at 4 a.m, I wake up and I'm thinking, you know what? I think I want to shoot heroin. I want to shoot heroin. And I think I told you that, right? I'm like, I'm thinking about shooting heroin. And the way I say it was the way my mind was talking to me. Fuck all this. It don't matter. I'll show her. I'll kill myself. And then it'll be her fault. But anyway, I looked at my phone, and Oscar had texted me at like 4 a.m. And I had talked to him like the day before about getting firewood or something. At 4 a.m, he texted me. He never texted me at 4 a.m. So I texted him back and I said, hey man, I'm in a bad way right now. I need to talk. He said, give me a little bit of time. I'll call you. And that's how this program works. That's how it works. And that morning, he was sitting in my living room with me and Tamara, and we were talking about custody, judges, ex-wives, kids, child support. It was like God said, okay, I got it right here. And all of a sudden, after that conversation, we went out and cut a big tree and got a little, physical work. And again, I could breathe, and I'm like, I'm going to be okay. I got this. But man, AA is the one thing that, man, you got to invest. It doesn't just do it to you. You got to invest first. You got to put in and put in and put in, and you will get tenfold back. And I have. Man, I got all fired up at John because he pissed me off. And talker. And you know what John did the next time at the meeting? He goes, hey, our relationship is too important to me. Let's go out and talk about it. And we did. And that's what AA does. Like when you're invested in relationships, he gave me a little room to be a little, whatever you want to call it, whiny and sensitive and, little bitch. There, she says it. See? She's not where I'm at. She still calls me names. I'm hoping. But that's the truth, right? And we can laugh about it. But, I don't really have grudges. I punished the Sunday morning men's stag a while because Al pissed me off and he told my newcomer to get out of his chair and I didn't come. I was teaching that meeting. And I finally came back because Al's not coming anymore and me and Al will be okay. We'll get over it, right? But AA is like a family. Like you cannot hold grudges. You will go back out. You can't. And so, John and Al and all these people helped me to grow in spite of myself. So I just want to thank all you guys for encouraging my sobriety today, because I do this so I can stay sober, right? Because I really am all about myself staying sober. And I hope to see you, as we trudge this road of happy destiny. So thanks again, and I'll pass.
Let's thank Dave one more time.